it'll get you the wide shot.
Good evening. This is Matt Mosley with Big Pig Energy coming to you tonight. We've got a guest, man. We're looking forward. We got a couple of guests, actually. Brad Caldwell from the Arkansas Sports Network's with us. We've also got Mr. Grant Cook, former Razorback offensive lineman, former Minnesota Viking, Green Bay Packer. Grant, thanks for joining us tonight. Also got Coach Kelly. Coach Kelly's back after a 2-week hiatus. Really looking forward to hearing kind of where he's been, what he's been doing, and hear his wonderful wisdom about what the Razorbacks are doing week to week. We're going to dive right in tonight. You know, Arkansas went down. We're going to talk about the Auburn game to start out. Arkansas went down to Jordan-Hare in Auburn, Alabama. You know, we were talking about the game last week. There was really no trepidation about were we going to win this game. We all felt pretty comfortable that the Hogs were going to come out on top. I think what everybody was concerned about was how close the score was going to be. You know, the Hogs went down there on a 6-game losing streak to the Tigers, came out winners 41-27. First win since 2015 and the first in Jordan-Hare since 2012. Grant, tell me, what's it like? I know you played down there, man. What's it like in Jordan-Hare when that crowd's fired up?
Yeah, you know, I had a couple experiences down there, a couple wins. And a loss to the eventual national champions, and led by Cam Newton. I think at that point, at the end of that game, was the highest total combined score of any SEC game in history. But yeah, it's definitely a daunting atmosphere when Auburn's hitting on all cylinders. I think luckily this year, you know, we catch them on a downslide, and by the looks of it on TV, about the third quarter, it was pretty sparse in that stadium, and so, you know, but yeah, I mean, an SEC road win is an SEC road win in my mind, right? And so, glad to come out of there with a win, another one in the right column, or the correct column rather. In the left column, which is the correct column. And anytime you can get it done on the road and then come back here home for a pretty good stretch of home games, it's lining up to be a special November.
Yeah, and we're going to get into talking about the rest of the season here in just a little bit. A couple things I want to talk about first. You know, the Hogs had a 100-yard rusher again on Saturday. Rocket Sanders went for 171. It's a program record, 9 consecutive games dating back to last season. Arkansas recorded over 200 yards on the ground in 7 of 8 games this year, and 400 total yards of offense in 7 out of 8 games. And I know, and Coach, we've talked about this a lot. There's been a lot of questions about Coach Briles and the way the offenses look week to week. And I'm hesitant because I'm one of his detractor, a little bit of his detractor. I'm not real tickled with some things I see, but offensively, production wise, the last 2 weeks things have got a lot better.
Yeah, and I think you're selling yourself short when you say detractor. That has a negative connotation, but I think it's somebody that's going to be honest.
Yeah,
you're being honest about what you saw and what you're seeing, and. What I'm seeing is this. I think, partially a combination of whether everybody believes it or not, coaches know what people are saying about them. You hear it, you read it. People are, I mean, even if you stay away from the media, people screenshot it and send it to you. You can't be away from it. And I think the good thing that can do is you can take a deep look at yourself and what you're doing and go back to the A&M game. We're undefeated. We're running the ball on them. And what happened? We called like 2 reverses in a row, And it's easy to judge, and he may have seen something he liked, but everybody had a problem because they're like, things are going so well and you call an oddball play. Well, we hadn't seen any of that lately, right? And the other thing I think slowly but surely he's getting to know his receivers and maybe trust them a little bit better and know when we're in a good spot with them. What coverages are they the best against? What routes do they run the best? All those kinds of things. So as we go through the season, I think he's just gotten a little bit better and a little bit better with his personnel. And I think we're seeing that now. Now, also, Auburn's a little bit in shambles, as we can see. So we weren't maybe facing a team that was completely focused, but we took advantage of it. BYU, as it looks now, may not have been as good as advertised. But again, we did what we had to do. So I think it's a combination of all those things.
Well, the key Saturday, we talked about it last week, Coach, and I wish you could have been, with us last week. We talked about Arkansas's run offense versus Auburn's run defense. It was a tale of two games because the Razorbacks, I mean, that's their bread and butter is power the ball up, run off tackle, do things inside, make guys make mistakes up front. The offensive line did a great job again last week. Rocket finished with 174, was averaging, I think, for the game. Now, of course, that big run there at the end in the third bumped his average up, but he was at 10.7 yards a carry. And to me, I mean, as a fan, that you want to see that every week. Now, you're not going to see that every week, but you want to see that kind of production out of your tailback. Rocket actually matched Madre Hill's school record for quickest to 1,000 yards in 8 games. And he's sitting on 1,041 on the season. I mean, if he keeps going the way he's going, I mean, we're looking at an opportunity for him to break Darren McFadden's, single season record, which is, I think, 1,800 and change.
Now, in Darren's defense, he was splitting with some pretty good backs too.
He absolutely was.
Yep.
And there's guys that are pushing for carries, but I mean, you're still getting AJ Green in there. They're getting DeBinion. We got the bad news this week about Dominique Johnson. Shout out Dominique with the ACL. That's terrible for any athlete, but having 2 on the same knee in back-to-back years, the fans need to understand like what that does to the mental side of that player. It gets a little goofy, and we just pray he recovers and he comes back stronger than before. But Rocket, and I keep going back to Rocket, man. It's like seeing number 5, like when he broke down that left sideline, number 10 from Auburn, of course, he got embarrassed by KJ early in the game. KJ stiff-armed him back out into Opelika. But when 10 ran him down, I was like, he's a little winded or he wouldn't have caught him. I really don't think. I mean, Rocket's that fast. But he's, 100 yards in 6 games this year, his 3rd straight 100-yard effort. KJ Jefferson finished the day 16 for 24, 234 and a touchdown with 63 yards on the ground on 10 attempts, 2 TDs. Coach, we've seen KJ the last 2 weeks, and the rest of you guys, I want to hear your take on this. When KJ's got time, I'm seeing a lot of this. Like he's dancing, he's patting the ball, and it's like he goes check 1, check 2, and if check 2 ain't there, like he's dancing side to side a little bit. Do you think that is a coaching thing where they've told him like, hey, we really don't want you to run? Or do you think it's just him legitimately trying to train himself to go to that 3rd check or look for that 3rd receiver?
Well, it's their job to train him what they want him to do, period. So I think it's always on the coaches. If they don't like what he's doing, it's their job to coach him out of it. If they do, and it's their job to coach him into what they want. I'm not a ball patter because everything comes down to literally 1/8 of a second when you're in the pocket. And a 1/4 of a second over 600 passes is 25 sacks. And so an 1/8 of a second over 600 passes in a season would be 12.5 sacks. Well, that's a sack a game. And what I'm saying is when you pat the ball, when you take your hand off, you are going to put your hand back on before you throw it. So when you decide to throw it, if you happen to have your hand off the ball, you're going to put it back and then start the throw. That's costing you time. So I'm sure they don't want him doing that. And nobody wants to, because then you can find tells. Does he pat it and then throw the ball? And nobody wants that. So I think, though, you ask what it stems from. I think it stems from this. And you and I, we were big on this beginning of the year. I think they were at the beginning of the year saying, take your first look. If it's not there, pull it down and run the ball.
Yeah.
And now I think they're trying to get him to go through his progressions, but it's a nervousness for him because he wasn't doing that at the beginning of the year. And now he's starting to get accustomed, he's starting to try to get used to it, but he's got that nervous habit about him. That would be just from my limited knowledge and watching what I've seen and working with quarterbacks for 30 years. That's what I would say.
Well, Grant, from your perspective, I mean, I know you were in the league for several years. Working, being around quarterbacks, is this as Coach said, kind of a nervous thing where he's trying to learn to go through progression, or do you think this is a developmental mechanical thing with him?
Well, I think every quarterback's got a clock in their head, right? And every quarterback's a little bit different. And for a running quarterback or someone that can run like KJ, I think his natural instinct is, on this play, this is who we're targeting. Not there, go to 2. And to Coach's point, if they're trying to coach him now to work through the rest of those progressions, and I think we've seen it in some of these games where he's hit Dominion on checkdowns, he's hit Rocket on checkdowns, and some of them have been big plays. You see that that's probably where they're leaning to. The other thing, in the last couple of games, he's taking some shots, right? And so we're going to have to think about, all right, how good are we without KJ, right? And the coaching staff's talking, how good are we without KJ? And that's nothing against that's nothing against Malik or any of those other guys, but we're not good or not as good on offense without KJ in the game, right? So let's think about taking some more time, getting through your progressions. And a lot of times, like I said, you're checking down to a running back and still getting 10, 12, 15 yards on a check down. But it goes back to every quarterback, and Coach can probably attest to it, and they're all a little bit different. They've all got a clock in their head, right? And I remember when we were playing, of course, Mallet wasn't the best runner. So you really didn't have to worry about it. It had to be real bad before he took off. But we'd be blocking our tail off, and all of a sudden a quarterback works his way through the pocket into a sack versus just hanging in there, right? And so I think KJ's probably a little nervous because his first, inclination is, all right, I'm running, but they're probably coaching him to hang in there and find those other receivers. So probably a little bit of a mix of all of it.
Yeah. Well, like you're saying, Grant, they have to coach that clock. I mean, they made his clock shorter, I think, at the beginning of the year, and they were saying 1 look and go. So he's like, I got 2 seconds and I'm out of here. And now they're like, hey, you've taken some shots. And just like you said, nobody's cracking on another kid when they say we're better with KJ. That you can take that as a slight to Malik or whoever or Vorton or whatever, but it's not. One guy's the best. That's why he's starting. We're not as good without the guy. And they've worked their offense around him where we need him to run the ball. We need him to do some things. And at the same time, he is getting hit. His shoulder yesterday, I don't even think he got to finish practice because his shoulder's hurting him. So they do got to keep him in the pocket, not let him go run so much. And they're trying to teach him that. But they've got to coach that clock too. They coached him into the short clock. Now they've got to coach him into a longer clock. And I think he'll get it because he seems to be a guy that is coachable and tries to do what they say.
I think that offensive line's doing a good job too of giving him the time that he needs. He's got to trust those guys because truthfully, that's as good an offensive line as we've had in a number of years. And so it's probably easier to coach that clock when you got those guys up in front of you, and you don't have to run as much. But yeah, I completely agree with you.
I think the broadcast actually put out that we are maybe the top in the SEC as far as time that the quarterback has on the drop back, 3.13 seconds, something along that line there.
Well, we've if you look at PFF, and I do a lot, one for betting statistics, but also to kind of keep track on, it's a good resource to look at blocking information for running pass blocking, what specifically down to the type run blocks that they're doing or the type pass block sets that they're running in coordination with the offense and the way the offense is playing. PFF's got us ranked one of the top offensive lines in the country, and I think we're second or maybe second in the SEC behind Tennessee right now. Tennessee, they're number 1 in the country as of yesterday. God help us all. If you ain't right with the Lord, you better get it because he's coming back because Tennessee's back number 1. That's the only explanation. Moving on a little bit, shout out to Jaden Hazelwood and Matt Landers. How huge have those two guys been this season? Hazelwood led receivers on 5 catches to 6 targets Saturday, 61 yards and a scoring touchdown on a pretty pass across the middle. And then Matt Landers had another 100-yard day, kind of quietly got 115 yards Saturday. How nice is it to have 2 guys like that, one outside, one inside, to be able to work the field? Because last year we didn't have a dependable guy that was an every game dude that could work the middle because it was always Traylon going deep or Traylon taking something across the middle on a skinny post or something. How great is that for a quarterback to have two guys he can depend on every single week.
I think that takes the ability of the defense to double cover one guy away. Last year, Treylon did it, and he always had a corner on his face and a safety lined up directly over him. He was definitely cheated to him, and a lot of times directly over him. Now, that helped our run game because if they want another safety back there, they got to take him out of the box and that kind of stuff. And I think, I've been tooting Landry's horn all year long. I wanted him to get the ball to him. I just saw something in him and thought he would be that guy. I didn't know. Now I'll untoot my own horn. I didn't know Hazelwood would be as good as he is, but he is. And I think that helps where, one of those guys is going to have a pre-snap that's more open than the other guy based on how the defense is aligned. And if we're smart enough to take advantage of that either one of those guys can make you pay. So you got to kind of pick your poison now on defense. And that's when you become really good on offense. We know we can run the football. And we know our line's really good at passing, like Grant said, like you said, PFF said. If we can do those things effectively, now you can win the game two different ways. And that in itself is a big, big thing because, Liberty coming up, and I know we're not there yet, the first two games they played, they gave up 220 yards a game rushing. I looked, and it was no anomaly. There was no 80-yard run or anything like that. But every game since then, they've given up 80 yards a game. They went from 220 to 80. What that probably means, without me looking at any film on them, is that they brought another safety down and said, we got to have another guy in the box. If they did that, that means we may have to throw the football, and it's nice to have two really good receivers to throw it to.
And I was going to say, man, Jaden Hazelwood, like, got a lot of friends, are Oklahoma fans, got a lot of guys over in Oklahoma I do business with. Did not hear great things about him as far as attitude, work ethic, these kind of things. This dude works his tail off. And I'm not talking about in practice. I don't know what, we don't really know what goes on in practice. Go watch the tape. Look at that dude run block. I mean, that's the sign of an elevated wide receiver that is smart enough to know, I want to get my touches. I got to block for my running back. And he's a dog, man, for a dude that's not bigger than 6'2", like maybe 190, 200 pounds. That dude's a dog, man. I mean, he's put some dudes on their back this season, pancaked some guys out on the edge. So, shout out Jaden Hazelwood. You're getting a fan in the old Sasquatch. Speaking of Sasquatches, Landon Jackson got a huge field goal block Saturday. I was tickled to see that. First one since 16. Big Dan Skipper, shout out Big Dan up in Detroit. Last time we saw one 16 against Alcorn State. But, I was looking at the grades yesterday, getting ready for the show. We had to push off to today because of some scheduling conflicts. But, man, I was looking at the grades. Who the highest graded defensive player was Saturday? Hudson Clark. How big is it for him as a walk-on, going to a scholarship player and a starter, been kind of maligned by some folks in the fan base, playing corner, getting a band, he's had last couple of weeks, man, that dude, they moved him to safety. It's like a different football player right now.
It's a big move.
I mean, look how much more confident he is than how he plays since they moved him to safety.
I think it suits him. I think it suits his game.
Does suit him. He never should have been playing corner in the SEC.
Yeah.
He just never should have been. He should have been at safety the whole time being developed. Maybe they had a need and he was the best we had to stick in there. But, it's really, we did a disservice to the poor kid, and good for him. I mean, we said it. I said it. I'm not afraid to say it. When he was a corner, he was a liability for us.
Yeah.
And as a safety, I think he's turned into an asset. So good that they figured out where to put him. And better for him that he was able to overcome the negative feedback that you're going to get. And I don't even apologize for it, because if you step into that role and you take that scholarship, that's what comes with it in SEC football. But, nobody's cracking on him as a person. I said multiple times, I met the kid in person, thought he's a great guy, and, the kind of guy you'd like to take to, dinner and hang out with and that kind of stuff. But good for him on finding that and being an asset. I didn't know he graded out the highest. That's fantastic. That's awesome.
Think about
graded. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, just think about this, that he didn't have an interception after that Ole Miss game 2 years ago where he got 3. They put him at safety, first game, right? He gets a pick, almost gets another one. Kid can read the field very well. just didn't have the athleticism enough to play cornerback in the SEC, as Coach Kelly was saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a little
I'll
slow
tell
flipping
you.
his hips.
You know, there's very few people that can play cornerback well in the SEC.
Right.
And usually that they're going to transition to play cornerback well on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays as well. I mean, if they're that good. And I'll tell you, playing out of position in the SEC, whatever position it is an extremely difficult thing. You see very few people that can do it, and I think just thinking off the top of my head, you look at someone like a Trey Knox that goes in from receiver to tight end, asking him to do some unconventional things that he's never done in his whole career and has adapted and done well, right? There's not many people that can play out of position in the SEC. I mean, it's a farm league for the NFL, right? And so, whether that's snapping the ball, moving a guard, moving a left tackle, right tackle, from an offensive line standpoint, I'm just glad to see Hudson get in, get some clock, and start to kind of redeem, what he was doing there at safety. And I do think Coach is right. There was probably a need, and he was the next best in the lineup, and we had to put him on the field because there was that big of a gap.
Well, think about this. Even though he was playing out of position, he was able to get 3 interceptions in an SEC game. I mean, it says something about the talent that he actually has, and then the fact that they're able to move him to safety, which is more of a natural position for him, and the fact that Arkansas is depleted at safety in such a way, it's really been a nice move for him and for the team itself.
Well, and his stats are going to be a little bit skewed because as soon as you show a little bit of weakness, those offenses are going to exploit that week in and week out. I mean, it doesn't matter what position you play. Just like the poor kid at Auburn, whoever he was lined up over, that's who the ball was going to go to, and everybody knew it. I mean, if you show that there's that you got a little bit of chink in the armor, it's going to get exploited over and over again. So Hudson's stats probably are a little skewed because he got more attempts thrown his way than anywhere else. But kudos to him for bouncing back.
Yeah, and while you're talking about guys moving, how hard it is in the SEC, shout out to my guy Luke Jones. Guy moved to left tackle this year and is doing a phenomenal job. And I'm not just saying that because he's, played for me and I love the kid, but I mean, it's so hard in the SEC, and you go to left tackle, the blind side of the quarterback. Everybody knows you're by yourself. You're, centers and guards. God love all the linemen. I mean, I always said it starts with your line, and a lot of coaches do. And it goes as the line goes. I don't care if you've got Walter Payton back there. If you can't block, it ain't going to matter. I remember the Pittsburgh Steelers hurled an Earl Campbell to 19 rushes for -2 yards one time. And that's Earl Campbell. It doesn't matter who you got blocking. I mean, who you got back there if you don't block. But Luke changed positions, did so with an open mind. And I think it's paid dividends for the Hogs and probably for him in the future. Let's be honest.
Hey, and a quick note on Luke. I've been watching like through PFF, looking at the stats, and I was looking at the 2023 draft class the other day. Offensive tackles, we got 2 of them in the top 20 in the country.
Wow!
And graded tackles, and Dalton Wagner. And of course, Wagner's a little higher based on his grade. I would expect that on the right side. Left side, Luke's in the top 20.
Well, you're going against their best when you're on the left side.
That's a fact.
They're going to put their animal.
Absolute fact. Real quick, want to finish up on the defense real quick. Dwight McLaughlin led all Razorback defenders with 7 tackles Saturday. We've been really harping on this all season. He's missed tackle numbers. Grant, I don't know if you've looked at it, but man, first game was 13, second game was 14, Missouri State was 21. We've had double-digit missed tackles all but 2 games. BYU and Bama so far 8-8. They cut it to 6 on Saturday. Yeah, I know, and some folks asked me, they questioned me about it. They were like, what constitutes a missed tackle? So I had to give them the PFF definition for a missed tackle. But I can tell you, I saw a little something different Saturday. I think it was more of the way that Odom was calling the game Saturday, because he kind of knew Auburn was going to try to power up and run the ball. They weren't going to try to throw it very much. So he was a little more in his bag, a little more comfortable. We got to the quarterback 3 times Saturday. We got 2 sacks, so first sacks in the last 2 games. Paul, Miles Slusher back from injury. Great to have him back. Jordan Dominic finally got another sack. And then Landon Jackson had 4 hurries on the quarterback, 4 pressures. I think that was a game that the defense needed going into the rest of conference play. They kind of needed a little boost of confidence, because if you read the media, if you listen to talk radio, you get on social media, anything, like everybody's talking about how bad the defense has been. It's constantly just there, because statistically it's been really, really bad. They improved in the red zone on Saturday from 106th to 89th on offense, moved to 16th from 16th on third down to 14th. Those are two huge moves to the Razorbacks defense or offensively. The ground game still proven to be the thing that makes the offense go. The Hogs started the weekend with the 9th best rushing attack in the NCAA. And with the performance they had running the ball, they moved up to 6th. Total defense, third down percentage continues to plague the Hogs. We got 4 games left. We got a non-conference on Saturday, and then we got 3 straight conference games, 2 of them in our own house. Guys, what can the Hogs do defensively to continue to see that growth? I mean, what do you guys want to see out of the defense over the next 4 games?
I'll tell you one thing that benefits us, and it's going to help us on defense, is the schedule makers helped us out this year. Here's what I mean by that. We play LSU after a non-conference game, which is good. We also play LSU the week after they play Bama.
Yep.
Everybody's always beat all to heck after they play Bama, and they're emotionally drained because you get up, and that LSU-Alabama game is going to be a big one. And then we play Mississippi the week after they play Alabama. So we really caught both of them well. So if we're ever going to improve on defense against those 2 teams, we need to do it when they're probably just coming off a super focused game. They're probably beat up a little bit and those kinds of things. But from my viewpoint, to answer your question, I would like to see us attack more the quarterback in passing downs. I'd like to see us put pressure. If we have to blitz, but we've got to put pressure and help our secondary out, because that just tells me that you're not afraid and that our secondary played better last week, but it's still a weakness for us. And we've got to help those guys out. I just want to see pressure on the quarterback. And there's, like I always say, there's not one quarterback in the NFL, not one, and that's the greatest 32 on the planet, that aren't worse when they're under pressure. They're all worse, from Tom Brady to Aaron Rodgers to Josh Allen to Patrick Mahomes. So if they're worse, how bad's a college kid going to be if you could put pressure on him?
Yeah, and I looked at the same thing that you did, Coach, to see that come off, the next 2 teams we play in the SEC come off Alabama. I'll tell you, we played Alabama the first conference game every year when I was playing, and probably pulling the curtain back and giving people a look. But I can tell you that last week of summer practice and part of the week of that first game, we always had a little bit of Alabama time scheduled in practice, right? So you had to get ready for that one. And when you come out of that, there are people that aren't walking the same as they did when they walked into the game. And, you think about, obviously LSU's kind of hit a bit of a good stretch here, figured some things out after the first couple of weeks. I think they're a formidable opponent. That Ole Miss is going to ride the running game with is it Judkins and Evans. Those guys are going to get a lot of carries. They have all year. They're going to be beat up coming out of that. But here through the rest of the season, Coach took the words right out of my mouth. I think we've got to pressure the quarterbacks, right? And I do think that the secondary is held up a little bit. We got some health back in the secondary, which I think is extremely important. So now they've got the front 7 have got to hold up their end of the bargain and start getting some pressure on the quarterbacks. And I think that's where you'll start to see some things break loose on the back end. I don't think we're a defense that's athletic enough to drop 8 or drop 7, and the quarterbacks are too good in the SEC. They'll just pick you apart. So I think we've got to get those guys a little bit uncomfortable, get them moving in the pocket, and that's when good things generally start to happen.
We've got to unleash the pressure, as Coach Kelly was talking about. I mean, Drew Sanders, we got to get him involved again. That guy has just kind of been almost kind of know. I don't know if he not disappeared, and I guess, but he's just not the same guy as we've seen earlier this year. And he was causing such havoc with his pressures. We've got to see a little bit more of that. You know, we've been talking about the defense a little bit, but we gave up a lot of yardage against a team that really offensively wasn't that good. They're only averaging 22 points a game coming into the game. We gave up 27. That, you know, in college football today, that's not that bad, but still gave up lots of quarterback runs, 287 through the air to a guy that really wasn't that good. In fact, didn't even know if he was going to start this game. So, I mean, there's still a lot of concern, but I think you guys have talked about it more than once. We are who we are at this point. We got to figure out how to overcome that. In my opinion, the way to overcome that, score points.
One of our listeners asked a question, and I noticed this the last couple of weeks. Halftime, Coach Pittman has said, you know, we either need to stick to it. You know, we'd opened it up passing the ball. And then last week he said we need to run the ball. I mean, is that indicative of him seeing something, or him kind of sliding his coordinator and saying, hey, you need to make an adjustment here? I mean, because it's something that I haven't heard him say before, but he said it the last 2 weeks.
I don't think so. I think he just feels the pressure of needing to win. And when you do that, you fall back to who you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that the players, you know, talk about that they might not like about Pittman, it might be the only thing they don't like about him, is they think practices are a little too physical. And, you know, and hitting too many days a week and those kinds of things. Well, that goes into that, you know, an offensive line coach, an ex-offensive line coach, an old school guy. And I'm with it. You know, you want to line up, be able to hit the guys and run the ball and that. And when things aren't going well, you want to revert back to who you are. And I think that's probably where it's coming from. I don't think he's looking out there and thinking, oh, well, they've got, you know, they're playing two gap defense, or, you know, or they're in an odd front. We run better against. I don't think that's it. I think it's just he's like, that's who he wants to be.
Roger that. Hey, quick score update. If nobody's watching, and of course it's on TV. The ladies are up 68-46 going into the fourth quarter against UArk Fort Smith. Just want to give them a shout out, let them know we're thinking about them tonight. Real quick, we're going to move on from the Auburn game. Greg's got our Razorback sports report. Greg, what's been going on the Hill this past week? What can we expect going on into the first part of next week, buddy?
All right, so I got some results from the things that I talked about last week. We played Kentucky on October 27th, and it was a senior night in Fayetteville. We won 6-0 against the Wildcats. Grace Barbara, she tallied her 11th shutout of the year, and she actually leads the SEC for shutouts. Anna Pagil, she scored her 44th career goal, and she ties the Arkansas all-time record with that number. Friday, we had the men and women's cross-country championship, SEC championship in Oxford. Our top hog for the women, it was Isabel Van Camp. She finished 4th place. And then for the men, our top hog was Patrick Kiprop. He finished 5th place for the men. Our volleyball team traveled to Gainesville, and they had a 2-game series against the Gators. We got swept in the first game of the series. And then on Sunday, we lost that in 5 sets. So it was a really, really competitive match. And that puts the Hogs 14-7 on the year and 5-6 in the SEC. Our men's basketball team traveled to Austin, Texas, and we lost 90-60 in our second exhibition game. That was, you know, it was an ugly game, but, you know, we're still working out the kinks. So Texas started the second half on the 25-5 run. And I mean, they just never looked back after that. That second half was crazy. Last night, we had the SEC tournament for soccer. We lost the game was a draw, but then they went into shootouts, and we lost 5-4 to Vanderbilt. That was in the quarterfinals. And then we have next week the NCAA selection show, and that's going to let our Lady Backs know where their postseason is going to go, because the NCAA tournament starts next week. So tonight, actually, our volleyball team is playing. I don't have a score update, but we're looking to bounce back against South Carolina. Friday, we have our swim and dive team taking on Liberty. And then obviously Saturday, we have the Hogs taking on Liberty. On the 6th, our volleyball team is traveling to Athens to take on the Bulldogs at 3:00. And then next Monday, the 7th, we have our women's basketball team traveling to Pine Bluff, and they play at 6. And then our men's basketball team opens up the season at the Palace at 7:00 on SEC Network Plus. So that's what we got coming up. Oh, we're playing North Dakota State University, for those that don't know.
Yeah, I had to eat a little crow this week. HEB Grocers down in Texas I've got some really good friends, do some business with those guys, and I may or may not have to buy a couple rounds the next time I'm in Austin. So shout out to those guys. They were going to watch tonight. I told them, I was like, hey, I'll give you a shout out on the show. Y'all beat us. It is what it is. Real quick, I want to pause for a second, give a shout out to our sponsor, Big Pig Energy, Mid-Delta Land Management out of Lake Village, Arkansas. They serve the entire state of Arkansas with specific land management strategies targeted to get the best value out of your property and increase your annual income return and produce premium land appreciation. Call our partners at Mid-Delta Land Management today at 870-737-2217 to schedule an appointment. Let's move on into Liberty, guys. Homecoming, 3:00 kickoff, SEC Network. Hogs open the line up -14 and over and under 64.5. I think that over and under's dropped a little bit. It's like 62 points right now, I believe, last I looked. Liberty's coming in ranked number 23rd in the AP poll with a 7-1 record. The only loss they've got is a 37-36 shootout against Wake Forest. I actually picked Liberty in that game. Coach and I were like, he was laughing at me. I was like, hey, I'm telling you, Liberty's going to get on Wake Forest. The Flames' other 6 FBS opponents, Southern Miss, UAB, Akron, Old Dominion, Massachusetts, and BYU have combined their record of 18-32. Doesn't look really good. Liberty's strength of schedule coming in to play the Hogs. And they won 21-20 over Gardner-Webb as a 5-loss team from the lower subdivision. Saturday's the 3rd time Hugh Freeze comes to Fayetteville. There's speculation about him and what he's going to do with the Auburn job and all that stuff. His Ole Miss teams were ranked in Grant, this after you, but Ole Miss teams were ranked 8th in 2014 and 12th and 16, lost by scores 30-0, 34-30 respectively. The 4th and 25 game, the Hunter Heave. Freeze is 2-3 against the Hogs all time, and he's lost his last 3 games against the Razorbacks when he was coach of Ole Miss. Liberty ranks 46th in total offense, 25th in total defense on the season. The Flames are bringing the 36th best scoring offense into the country, into Fayetteville. I'm asking this question. I want you guys to give me some feedback. Based on the defensive issues we've seen, could we be looking into a shootout on Saturday? I mean, a score-for-score kind of a game. Do you think that's possible with a team like Liberty? Because we know Hugh Freeze can dial up a game. I mean, the guy can call plays.
I guess I'll go first because I've been jumping in. I like to talk. I don't even understand how Liberty is ranked. I mean, like you said, the schedule they've played, and they've escaped Gardner-Webb by 1. I mean, freaking Akron by 9. Wake Forest by 1. UAB by 1 score. Southern Miss by 2 points. I went and watched Southern Miss play in person, and I'm just going to tell you, they're not a very good football team.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk some of y'all into picks later that you don't want, but God, I think Arkansas beats them by, and Matt, you and I have been the best about not picking Arkansas just because they're our team, but trying to look at it, I think Arkansas beats these guys by at least 2 touchdowns and probably 3. And I'm looking, I'm like, who's the ranked team here? That's unbelievable.
Well, I was a little shocked that they got ranked. I'll be honest with you. When it came out in the AP and it said they were 23rd, I was kind of like, Man, that's a little generous.
Well, the question
You
you
know,
ask yourself is, who's the most intelligent people on the earth? The Associated Press or the people that set the line in Vegas?
Vegas.
Well,
Vegas.
Vegas says
My
we're
God,
two
Vegas.
touchdowns. Yeah, Vegas says we're 2 touchdowns better. So
I
who should
have long said that Vegas needs to set the AP poll. Like the writers don't need to have a vote anymore. Let Vegas set who's in the poll.
Right.
Because
Don't miss.
I was listening to the playoff presentation last night, and one of the guys, basically said Arkansas beats A&M. Arkansas, he was essentially saying, he was talking about Alabama's win in Fayetteville being one of their signature wins on the season. There's still people in the media that believe in this football team and believe in what they can do nationally, which I'm going to be honest, I haven't heard that in a long time. Going back to when you were playing Grant, we would hear it when Bobby was there. We heard it when Darren McFadden was on campus. I got to go all the way back to when Kenny Hatfield, when I was a little guy, when Kenny Hatfield was there, we got a lot of respect nationally because we were good. We were a strong football team back on both sides of the ball back in those days. But the Flames come in, they're 100th on third down. The Hogs are 123rd on third down defensively. I think this is going to be the battle of third down Saturday. I think Arkansas is going to have to show themselves on defense that we can get off the field on third down against. Because, they killed us. Missouri State killed us on third down. And as far as subdivision teams go, I would put – now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I believe Bobby Petrino and Hugh Freeze are on the same level as a play caller. But Hugh Freeze is still a dangerous dude when he's got time to dial up and get ready for a football game.
But they don't attack our weakness. Our weakness is our secondary, and these guys can't throw.
Yeah.
They can throw when they're behind. They can throw when they're behind a little bit and people are dropping, but they can't throw the ball. They don't throw the ball, and that's our weakness. And we can throw the ball, and I think they're having to bring an extra guy down. I just think it's a terrible matchup for them. And in just our strength versus their weakness, their strength versus our weakness, they don't attack our weakness. That's why in any way, shape, or form, I can't possibly see how this is a bad matchup. And like you said, though, we're not good on third down. They're not good on third down, though. It's just not a good matchup for them.
Shouldn't Arkansas's physicality be able to overcome Liberty? And then even when you're talking about a loaded box, we run outside zone, inside zone. That's the two things that we run, in our running game. That's they call it in that offense, they call it the brown spot running game when they're running it on the inside. But shouldn't we not be able to run against that box because they still have to account for KJ in the running game? That means that even though they're bringing somebody down in the box, that they can't overload one side or the other. They have to play it straight up. We should be able to block that, should we not?
Yeah, we should be able to, and not if they bring an whole extra guy down. What that does is if you've got a 7-man, then you match up and KJ holding the backside in, you don't have to block him. And defenses always have you outnumbered. You've just got to scheme against them and run away from the one guy that's got you outnumbered, leverage wise, if they're sliding this way or sliding that way. And, but with an extra guy down there, they'll still have an extra guy, but we run it. If you run outside zone, you can run away from that guy. And if you run inside zone away from that guy, you've still got an advantage where he's coming from the side, making an arm tackle, even if he's unblocked. So in Arkansas, they're pretty good at picking those spots out in the run game. That's the thing I'm most confident in our staff about is when and how we run in the run game. So, yeah, and if we overpowered BYU, and you can look and see that they beat them, but I doubt that Liberty overpowered BYU like we did. BYU's got some dudes on that defensive line, and we manhandled those guys.
Yeah, and I think from a zone scheme in the running game, from blocking it for a few years, even if they do bring somebody down, a lot of time that guy gets caught in the wash. Inside zones, they're coming from the backside, trying to get around some of those double teams that are going up to linebackers, and the safety's not as freed up as you maybe want it to be, especially if you're going away from him. outside zone. Once again, you're leaving that backside defensive end. I'm going to take rocket speed over a backside defensive end, especially Liberty's backside defensive end, to be able to get to corner before he can run down the line and make a play. I think that we are going to have to throw a ball a little bit. We're going to be able to overpower them, but I mean, they're going to come in. Their whole game plan is going to be, we have to stop the run. That's what they're hanging their hat on, guys. And I can tell you, in those locker rooms in that practice, they're scheming up how to stop number 5. I mean, it's like 2006 and 7 all over again. Number 5 is running wild. We can't let him beat us, right? Let's let number 1 and number 9 and the rest of those guys beat us. But I still think that we overpower them up front. We could probably push them around a little bit. We'll still have our way in the run game, but we are going to have to throw the ball, and we're going to have to be good throwing the ball. And I think that it's more of a possession type game when throwing the ball. That we don't want to take as many shots. Let's go get first downs. Let's keep moving the ball and keep all aspects of the offense rolling. And I think that's probably what they're teaching. That they're coaching this week with KJ and those guys, because after the success we've had all year running the ball, that's what they have to take away or try to.
Talking about taking away the ball, I mean, that goes right into what I was going to ask. Turnovers are always a huge part of the game, plus or minus. Liberty's coming in even, flat in turnover margin. The Hogs are a little bit behind even for the year. Ball security has shown up in every single game we've played this season. We've had a fumble. KJ's had 1 pick, knock on wood. 9 fumbles. We've lost 7. Moving forward, last 4 games of the year, we've got some defenses, especially at LSU. I'm not really worried about Ole Miss's defense as much. I think that's going to be, we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks, but I think that's going to be a high-scoring affair like it was last year. But that's a stat we got to clean up between now and the end of the season. I mean, it's been a problem every game. I mean, Coach, what can they do to? I mean, some of this is just guys getting had on football, but some of this is running with the ball out, carrying it like a loaf of bread, toting it like a jug of milk, whatever you want to call it. It's just bad mechanical football from a running perspective, holding on to the ball and ball security.
Well, if you'll look, NFL's doing a little different nowadays. They're taking it up in front, because down here, people can still jab it from the back. 90% of fumbles occur when a back makes a cut. Mm-hmm. People talk about ball security and holding it here, but they don't talk about everybody can hold it there until they cut. When you cut, they move and your arms tends to get away from you. I mean, whether you're cutting right or you're jump cutting and you kind of step forward for a minute, when you run, you're used to pumping your elbows and your arm comes out away from your body. And that's when fumbles occur. The only way to stop that is to really focus on that moment. You can't just say, hang on to the ball, carry the ball against your ribs, because they do that 90% of the time. But the 10% is when it gets knocked out. You got to focus on that 10%. And we've been lucky, I think. I don't think we've given up as many as we could have, but the analytics will show that recovering a fumble is very much lucky. And that's why as a coach, you always want to tell your guys, pursue to the football on both sides. So when it is on the ground, you got as many guys there to get it as they do.
Moving on to some key matchups just for our fans to watch this week. I kind of picked out some guys and some matchups that I want to look for. Jaden Hazelwood against Kobe Singleton. Kobe's one of the better defensive backs for Liberty. And then Matt Landers versus Quentin Reese out on the edge. Quentin's kind of the key guy that makes things go out on the outside of the football. Arkansas's offensive line against Liberty's D-line. They got 4 guys. All of them are transfers. Darrell Johnson, Dennis Asegwe, Kendi Charles, and Trayshawn Clark. Demario Douglas, which is a receiver for Liberty, versus our secondary. The guy's got 615 on 42 receptions. He's averaging around 14.6 yards yak on the season. And he's got 5 TDs. Day Hunter's the main running back. This is a guy that I've kind of got circled for the Hogs. Like, this guy, we've got to stop him. Hunter's got 821 yards on 120 carries, 8 touchdowns. He's averaging on the season 6.8 yards a carry with his 8 TDs. He also had a career game last week against their last game against BYU, 213 and 23 carries, averaged 9.3 on the ground, and had an 80-yard touchdown run. So this guy's got breakaway speed. He can get it. We've seen in a couple of games this season where the Hogs have not got a guy in the front. Like the rush defense has not been great stopping the run up front. Guys are getting to the second level and breaking off chunk runs. That's kind of where my head goes when I'm not so much worried about Liberty throwing the ball down the field on us. I'm worried about that dink and dunk junk across the middle, those little short passes, guys missing tackles, reverting back to some old habits from early in the season. At quarterback for Liberty, you know, they had a quarterback battle. We're doing kind of a two-headed system there to start the season with Charlie Brewer and Jonathan Bennett. Bennett's pretty much took over the job. He had a career game against BYU. I think he finished with 247 on 24-29. So he's very efficient. It's the way that they're calling a game with 2 TDs. But he also has 7 INTs on the season. I want to say as a team, their quarterbacks have thrown 16 interceptions this year. That's a large number for any quarterback. 16 interceptions in the NFL get you fired. Liberty's right side, and this is, I think, going to be the key for the Razorbacks defensively. Liberty's right side of their offensive line is noticeably weaker than the left. I mean, they're really, really poor at that right guard position, that right tackle. Coach, we hadn't seen a rush really until last week. You know, 2 games, obviously Mississippi State, we didn't rush at all. BYU, they didn't get to the quarterback much. They really didn't put much pressure. Last week, they dialed it up on Auburn and got after Ashford. Do the Hogs kind of get back to what they did the first part of the season? I know we got some issues in the secondary. You know, Sam Mbake is moved on to the depth chart now as a backup corner, as a freshman. We got Chavis coming back. Slusher's back. Breeny's better than he has been health-wise. Hudson Clark kind of showing up at safety now. Do we dial the pressure back up? Do we see Odom start running those twist blitz and those inside blitzes like he was running those off-tackle blitzes that they were running early in the season? We see that again on Saturday?
Man, I mean, I hope so. I mean, I certainly hope so, because that's what we need to get back to. And then, you know, I think they're going to play it by ear. I think Liberty's pretty balanced in today's game. That's not always good, because you should use the pass more to set up the run and open things up a little bit, be more efficient in the run game. But it is what it is. I think they're going to have to. I think they're going to have to feel them out. This isn't a team they see every year. It's not a coaching staff they see every year. You can look on film, but how much stock can you look in a film that you see where they play Gardner Webb or somebody, you know, and Southern Miss? I don't know how much stock you can put in that. And so I think I would even want to play this one out a little bit. You know, play half a quarter, give them 2 series, and then start attacking what I see as a weakness. That's what I'd want to do.
One more question we've got from Adam Benton. Adam is unfortunately, is a Crimson Tide fan that we're trying to convert. He expects Rocket to have a big day, run the ball. You guys got a prediction? You want to put a number on how many yards Rocket's going to get on Saturday?
Rocket's going to get close to 200 on Saturday.
164.
That's strong. I'm writing that one down, Brad.
Yeah.
That one's going.
I don't have a number. I'll give you a number. 193. I mean, he's in a zone right now, playing well. Offensive line's playing well. I think he's got a chance to really, and he doesn't have to get that many carries to do it. He could probably do it in 20, maybe 22. So I think Rocket's got a chance to be big. He really needs to be big for us, because, Coach Kelly always talks about, using the pass game to set up the run. We use the run to set up the pass. And so if he's big in the run game, then I think that you'll be able to see KJ open up lanes, or the passing game will have open lanes and be able to throw into those lanes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to go on maybe a little bit of the other end of that. I think he's probably going to be right around that 115, 120. Like I said, I think that Liberty's coaching all week to take the run away. That's what we hang our hat on. I think that's what they're going to try to do. Now, when you do that, when you bring somebody else in the box, if you don't make a play in that second level, it gets real real dicey real quick, and that's where the big runs come, right? So there is nobody in the back end to protect a home run. So, if Rocket busts through, nobody's going to catch him. So he may have some big runs that get him up close to 200. But I think they're probably going to try to take that away as much as possible, which is probably going to limit his ability a little bit. I hope I'm wrong, but I swear, if he gets up past 200 or close to 200, we might beat these guys by 4 or 5 touchdowns.
I think he's going to have less than 100. And the reason I say that is because I've got 2 reasons to be right. One, if they blow him out, he doesn't play in the second half much. So, maybe he has 100 yards in the first half or 90. 2, if their defense is doing what I think they've been doing to stop the run, and like Grant's talking about, and just saying, if I am going to go into a game plan I against the Hogs, and this is, coaches do it different ways, but we always said we're going to take their one thing away they want to do the most to make them do something else. They do want to run the ball with him more than they want to do anything else. I'd take him away too. That's what I'd be planning on. I'd be sticking 9 guys down there and playing straight man everywhere else if I had to. But I could see him either them just loading up so much we have to throw it, them stopping him on 20 carries for 4.5 yards each isn't even 100 yards. And let's say they do that. I see him with 90 yards, whether it's on 10 carries because he didn't have to play very much, or 20 carries, and they just said, Razorbacks, you're going to throw it to beat us. So I'd say it's actually going to be an under game this week.
Greg, you want to throw a number down?
Yeah, I'm thinking, kind of like Brad. I think he's going to have a really big game. My number is around 164 total yards for him rushing.
And y'all going strong. I looked at it. I'm kind of like Coach. I don't think he plays with a half. I think the second half we're going to see a lot of Rashad Dubinion. I think we're going to see a lot of AJ Green. And I'll be honest, I think we might see a little James Joyner. And that's a kid that I've been wanting to see. I watched him play a little bit last year in Little Rock. James Joyner's a kid that I think once he gets some touches and gets his feet underneath him, I think James is going to be a good one for the Razorbacks long term. But I'd like to see him get some touches in this game. He hadn't played any this season really.
Called a game with Joyner last year in Greenwood, 266, 5 touchdowns. He's got an opportunity. He can play. He's a big kid, fast kid, comes from a good program, and they are producing a lot of athletes at Parkview. I think that Parkview program is going to start paying off for Arkansas because they've got a lot of kids over there that can play.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm looking for myself is to see some of these younger guys. We got some of them in the game last week against Auburn late. The 2 freshman offensive tackles got in. Dubinion got more carries. Malik got in, got to get a couple snaps. But I'm like Coach. I think he gets less than 100 because I think I think we're going to open it up throwing a football, and I think it's going to get out of hand early. And I just don't think Liberty's going to have to go to throwing the ball because we're going to get out on them early. We're going to go ahead real quick before we move into the picks. I want to give a final. Lady Razorbacks beat UAFS 92-62. Shout out to Michaela Daniels. Old girl went for 21 tonight on UA Fort Smith. Great start to the Lady Razorback season. Tickled to see what Coach Neighbors does with that crew. He's got a couple of transfers. Wolfenbarger's back. Got a couple of good ladies coming in. Looking forward to seeing what Coach Neighbors does with Lady Backs this year. Getting into Coach Kelly's pick'em. We're missing a couple. Danny and B are not with us tonight. I do have their picks, so I'm going to read those first. Just give you a status update where everybody's laying. Coach Kelly and Greg are tied for first at 43-15. Coach went perfect 6-0 last week. That's your first perfect week, I think, this season since week 1.
That was the first week I've been behind, so I had to come through.
I'm sitting in idle in third, like I'm holding up third place at 38-21. Danny had a 5-1 week last week. Like, I don't know where she's getting her numbers from. Danny, shout out Paul Swinbaum on Twitter, 34-24 on the season. And this is the number that shocks me. Queen Bee, 501 Queen Bee is 12-0. She's undefeated in two straight pick'ems this year with us.
Small sample size. Small sample.
Yeah, smaller sample
Yeah.
size, but she's 2 weeks in a row, man. That's pretty strong, 12-0. Winning percentage is better than anybody in the group. So week 10 games. All right, guys, we're going to get into the week 10 games. I'm going to go ahead and read the ladies' picks as we go through this. I'll do them first, and in the order we'll go in. We'll go Greg, Brad, Grant, me, then Coach, okay? Tennessee at UGA. This is a battle of top 10 teams. Tennessee came out this week. They're number one in the playoff poll. UGA's favored -9 at an over and under 65.5. Brad, what do you got?
UGA covers. I think that they're so fast that they'll be able to disrupt the offense of Tennessee. So I got Georgia.
Greg.
I got Georgia as well. That stadium is going to be absolutely nuts. I think it's going to kind of rattle the Tennessee players. So, and I mean, Georgia's, one of the most talented teams in the nation as well. So I think they're going to take care of business.
Grant?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Georgia as well. Are these straight picks, or am I giving up the points?
Yeah,
No,
if you want to give
picks.
some points, that's fine, but it's
No,
a straight picks, man.
Straight pick. I'm going to take Georgia. I mean, it's kind of one of these things where until they give me a reason not to pick them, I'm going to pick them. I think they've got enough athletes to match up defensively against the high-powered Tennessee offense, and I think they can do enough on offense to disrupt what Tennessee wants to do. So, and it's at home. That's really what the tipping point is for me. If it was at Tennessee, I'd probably lean that way. But with it being at Georgia, I'll take Georgia.
Strong. Brooke has picked UGA. Danny has actually shocked me. She picked UT. I couldn't believe that. She picked Tennessee to win in Athens on Saturday afternoon. Myself, and I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna tell you why I'm leaning this way. Like, I'm torn between these two teams. UT's offense is top offense in the country. They're scoring more points than anybody else. They're throwing the ball all over the place. Alabama is not the typical Alabama defense that we've seen in the past. They made Kool-Aid McKinstry look like a JV player, and Kool-Aid's good. I've watched Kool-Aid and Malachi Moore. I've watched all these guys play in Birmingham for when they were in high school. These guys could play. Georgia lost Nolan Smith. He's out. Nolan Smith is the heart and soul of that Georgia defense. I watched last week. Georgia's defense just looks a little clunky. Now, offensively, Brock Bowers, dude's a freaking cheat code at tight end. I wish the Razorbacks had him. The guy can flat get it. The concentration, the ball skills of the guy, his size, his build, the fast as he can move, catching the ball the way he catches a football, Brock Bowers is just off the charts. My gut tells me UT, but I hate the color orange, so I got to go UGA. I gotta go with my dogs. I got friends in Athens. Gotta go with the dogs. Coach, what you got? UT, UGA.
I think UT scores 30 on them. Everybody's talking about, well, they're so good on defense. I think they score 30 because they shell shock you with how fast they run their plays.
Yeah.
They do a really good job against Bama. I like Kirk Herbstreit, but he kept saying just stuff that he hears on TV himself. He kept saying UT's looking for matchups. They're not looking for matchups. They run a great job of switching receivers off the ball and confusing zone coverage. Zone coverage is not matchups. And Tennessee and Bama was playing a lot of zone against them.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't matchups. And he kept saying, Hyatt's running free down through there. Well, they're good at that. Switch routes are the best things you can do. You got to protect your quarterback a little bit longer, but they can. Hyatt's a monster. They're going to score 30, but it's going to be a high-scoring game. Georgia wins. I am concerned about what you said. Without Smith, last year at this point, Georgia, through this many games, had 20-something sacks.
Mm-hmm.
This year, they've got 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit concerning against a Tennessee team. But if it was in Tennessee, I might pick Tennessee. But in Georgia, I'm going to pick Georgia.
Well, and kind of where I'm going with picking Georgia myself, like I said, Georgia's defense, I think, is just that much better.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to see Georgia's going to get tested Saturday. Those two receivers they've got at Tennessee,
Yeah.
Them dudes can play now. Them guys are going to play on Sunday.
And Hooker's
somewhere.
a heck of a quarterback.
Oh yeah, he is absolutely.
Hooker's a heck of a quarterback.
I think Georgia wins, but I think Hendon Hooker's going to have a Heisman moment of some kind Saturday. I really do.
Wonder what the over-under is on that game.
65.5.
Okay, there's a reason it's that high.
Yeah.
Vegas knows.
Big game Saturday night. Shout out AB. He's going down to Baton Rouge, Alabama at the Tigers in Death Valley at night. I know, Grant, you played down there in the dark before. It's a trip down there at night. Bama's favored by 13, over and under a 58. Danny has got LSU picked. Again, I don't know where she's coming from. Like, I think she's living in Virginia too long. Brooke has got Bama picked to win. Greg, where you at?
Bama. I think they win by at least 17.
That's strong.
I know.
That's strong. Brad, what you got?
I got Bama. I just don't think that LSU is just quite ready for prime time just yet. I mean, they're good. They got a decent team this year, but you're talking about Nick Saban. I just don't think they're ready.
Grant?
I'm going to go Bama as well. I think, it's a first-year head coach in there. They've had a good stretch here. They're probably due for a loss. And Bama's got a really, really big or a really good way of ruining your night. So everyone's hyped up for a night game in Death Valley. And, man, they come in there and they're so methodical. They don't panic. And, they run what they run, and they do it well. Yeah, I think Bama probably covers that game.
I'm sorry, but I got to disagree, guys. My heart says Bama because I hate LSU. I hate picking for them for anything. I just think Bama they're subject to lose another game or two this year. Just the way they've been playing, the way they've looked. They've been a little clunky here and there. Things just ain't looking like the same old Saban to me. I think it's close. I think Bama loses by 3 points. I think it's going to come down to a field goal. And we all know what happens to Alabama when it comes down to field goal games. I just think nighttime, Baton Rouge, something weird's going to happen. It's after Halloween. Man, them corn dog eating coon asses in Baton Rouge do some wild stuff on Saturday nights. So I'm going with the Tigers. Coach, what you got?
I think it's either an LSU win straight up or Bama blows them out. I don't think LSU plays them within 7 or anything like that. And since I think that's the only two options, I got to go with Bama. But I was close to picking LSU. I mean, dangerously close, because I think that Daniels is getting better and better. Brian Kelly's doing a better job with him, understanding what he can do and what he can do well. The thing that terrified me about that really put me over the edge about picking Bama was the fact that LSU got slaughtered by Tennessee. I mean, just slaughtered by Tennessee. So that scared me a little bit. But man, I could make a case how LSU would beat them straight up at home. And here's the question we brought up on the buzz today that I'd like to ask all you guys real quick. Let's say LSU beats them. Okay. So LSU then runs through the rest of the thing, makes the SEC championship game, and beats Georgia or Tennessee, but Georgia. Okay. Either one of them. And you got a 2-loss SEC champion. Okay. Now let's say that Michigan goes through and beats Ohio State. So each one of them have 1 loss. So you got 1 loss. Well, Ohio State's getting in. And then Michigan has to get in. Okay. And then you got to probably take the Big 12 undefeated champion if TCU runs through. So my question is, if it comes down to taking an SEC 2-loss team, or an undefeated Big 12 team, which one does it take?
I'll answer that one really quick. I think that an SEC 2-loss team would run through the Big 12 like a hot knife through butter.
That
I
doesn't
don't
matter,
think,
though.
I don't
That's
think
not the question.
TCU. I don't think TCU. All credit to them for going undefeated if they continue down that road. But I don't think that they would be competitive against.
I know, but do you think they would choose to? It's not whether we think they'd run through them.
Politics.
I don't see how they could leave them out. I mean, I think you're right. But I'm saying, but that's not the question. The question is, will the selection committee leave out an undefeated Power 5 conference champion? Undefeated.
I mean, but
they've
look
got
at
a lot of work
TCU's strength of schedule. I
They
mean,
don't, but no 2-loss team gets in there. They don't let 2-loss teams in there.
The SEC is not going to get left out.
yeah.
I don't think
I
that.
kind of hope it plays out that way just to see what. Can you imagine the Big 12 fans and the TCU
Oh,
fans
man.
if they go undefeated and don't get in? I mean, that would be, if you are them. Let's be TCU fans for a minute. Our heart and souls bleed TCU. We went to TCU like people are Razorback fans. How mad would you be if you do everything you can do, run through your conference, play the conference championship, and they let a 2-loss team that lost to Florida State and got killed by Tennessee let them in ahead of you?
They already had that happen once, as far as they got left out of the playoff. They were, I think, were they not number 3 going into the final Saturday?
Yeah, but they had lost a game. So you had a
Okay, right.
1-loss SEC team and a 1-loss Big 12 team. That's no contest.
Wasn't it
I can
Ohio
tell you-
State, I believe, that jumped in there? But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I could tell you how mad I would be, because my last year at Arkansas, we were the number 3 team in the SEC West, as well as the number 3 team in the country. And because we lost to LSU and Alabama go play each other in the national championship game. So we get left out as probably the third best team in the country, still to that point, get left out of a BCS game on a technicality, because you can only have 2 teams represented from one conference. Although they were playing each other in the top game, the championship game, we didn't get selected. I think that's the year you had like a number 16 West Virginia play like maybe Ohio State or Michigan or something like that in the Sugar Bowl, which was an uncompetitive game. So I would be pissed if I was a TCU fan and we went undefeated and I didn't make it. But what the CFB rankings came out last night. Do they have LSU at 10?
Yeah, 10.
So I think it was 10 and like Ole Miss was like 11 or 12 or something like that. So let's play the scenario. They're a 2-loss team, right? But they run the table and they're already at 10. There's a good chance if they go and beat everybody else, they beat Bama this weekend, they run the table, and then they go beat a Georgia or a Tennessee in the SEC championship game, they're probably going to be in the top 4 with 2 losses regardless.
Yeah.
I still don't think they're taking them.
Wouldn't a Tennessee, let's just say that Georgia's a team that makes it from the SEC East, wouldn't a 1-loss Tennessee be the biggest beneficiary of something like that?
Yeah, but what I was saying is if Tennessee loses to Georgia.
Right, that's what I'm saying, though.
And then Georgia was to lose to LSU in the
right.
game. You got a 1-loss team in the East that lost to the team that played LSU in the SEC title game.
You got 2-loss
Alabama's
LSU.
gotten in, which is how Alabama's gotten in the past as well as a 1-loss team.
That's exactly.
That's
Oh, I
fact.
think if Tennessee goes and only loses 1 game, I think they're in.
Well, and I think
if they go wire to wire with Georgia, and they're not going to drop too far. I mean, they're going to they may be in the top 4 or 5 still after this week if it's down to the nitty gritty. And then if it plays out like Brad said, I could very easily see them sneaking in the back door of the college football playoff for sure.
I mean, I think what we're looking at here and what you're talking about, Coach, is a perfect example of why we need to go to 8 teams and be done with it. You know, because you've got a team that granted it's Big 12 football. Big 12 is not the SEC, but you got a team that's undefeated. You know, you're going to get the same arguments you got out of Cincinnati fans the year before they went. They were undefeated, should have gone, didn't go, went last year, got absolutely blasted.
But they're not even a Power 5 team. That's a different.
I get what you're saying, but I mean, you're splitting. Undefeated is undefeated.
Undefeated is undefeated. No, it is, but it's not. Here's one. Well, and it is. I think Power Five separates, but here's my argument for that, and it's this: if you join the SEC, like Oklahoma and Texas are going to do, they're not doing it because they want to go play Alabama and Auburn and Arkansas and Georgia every week. They're not doing it They're doing it because of this. Everybody knows they're doing it because of this. You make so freaking much money. Okay. No, that's all fine and good. Well, if you use that and you build your athletic facilities like all the SEC teams have, you're going to get better teams eventually. You should anyway, because recruiting and development, all this. That's one side of it. So they do have an advantage. Can we admit the SEC also has an advantage in recruiting because of that? And if we do, then I would say this: if you choose to be an SEC team, you also choose what comes with it, a better schedule. And if you lose 2 games, if you don't like it, that you're not going to make the national championship playoff with 2 losses, then go to another freaking conference where you can run the table and have at it. But you're not going to get your money, and you're not going to get all the talent that you're getting. I mean, freaking TCU is not getting Alabama players. They're not getting Arkansas players. They're not getting, so they do run the table. To me, they deserve it if they're in a Power 5 and run the table. And that's all I'm saying. But it's a great argument. We argued about that forever on the radio today, and I thought, well, I'm gonna bring that to you guys, see what you think. But would y'all not agree that's a pretty good argument, on both sides of that deal?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have some Horned Frog fans burning down Dallas and Fort Worth if that happens.
You know who screws it all up is freaking Clemson. If they go undefeated because they play, that's a wreck.
And that was the next game is Clemson Notre Dame. The Golden Domers are playing a little bit better defensively than they played to start the season. The offense still looks, I don't know what Tommy Rees is doing at Notre Dame right now. Clemson's got to go to Notre Dame. They're a 3.5 point favorite in South Bend. Over and under is 47.5. Danny has got Clemson. Brooke has got Clemson. Greg, what do you got?
I'm gonna follow suit. I'm gonna take Clemson as well. They don't cover though. I think they're just gonna win by 3. They're not gonna win by more than that.
All right, Brad.
Give me the Irish in the upset.
I like what you're thinking. Grant.
Yeah, I'm going to go Irish at home on that one. DJ's been playing better, but I don't much prefer Clemson, so I'm going to go for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think Henderson has got the defense playing very, very well. They're playing at home. The Leprechauns come out Saturday. I think Dabo's going to take a loss on Saturday, and it's pretty much going to put the ACC out of the tournament or out of the playoff. I really believe for the season. So I got to go with the Golden Domers on Saturday. Coach.
Listen, Notre Dame sucks. And there's no other way.
I love it when you sugarcoat things, Coach.
They can bring the leprechauns. They can bring the priests. If they've got any monks in there, drag them out there, and they're all going to get their butt kicked. And I'm not a Clemson guy. Their quarterback's terrible. They're not doing a good job with them. But in the end, Clemson's a better football team. What has Notre Dame shown anybody to make you think they can play with the quote number 5 ranked team in the country right now? They're terrible. They're at home.
I think Clemson is so disjointed offensively, they can't figure out who they are.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you, but they still know they're better than Notre Dame because at least what has Notre Dame done?
I just think if with
besides get beat at home by
the spread being that close, 3.5. I mean, I think that the crowd in South Bend is worth 6 points. And if you got 6 points, you got a Notre Dame win by 3. If you're 3.5 points.
Vegas is saying that over and under is not real high either. And the way Clemson's going to win is they're going to have to score more points.
They just look bad offensively.
And for me, it's just I don't want to see Clemson in the playoffs, so I hope they get beat by Notre Dame.
I think us, what do we got? What do we got on here? 6. I think us 6, and we could go pick 5 guys in my neighborhood. We could give Notre Dame a game.
Well, you're gonna have to find me an oxygen bottle and a wheelchair because
the game
I ain't gonna last on the edge very long.
The game only is 38 seconds long.
Okay. As long as I ain't gotta run more than 5 yards, we'll be in good shape.
So Clemson's coming off a win against Syracuse 27-21 2 weeks ago. They pulled, and I can't even say the kid's name.
Ugalele.
Yeah, right. Ugalele. They pulled him at the end of the game to be able to come back and win. They've got a quarterback controversy going on. True freshman, the kid out of
Kid out of Georgia.
No, I think he's out of Texas. He's not out the
Oh
Dallas
yeah,
school.
my bad. He is out of Texas.
South Lake
Carroll.
South Lake Carroll. There you go. That's what I'm trying to find. Anyway, he came in and led them to a victory. I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback, but you send that kid in there at Notre Dame, 6:30 p.m. kickoff. I would say that Notre Dame's got a fighting chance.
Well, my alma mater, Dabo and I went to same high school together. He was a GA when I was playing at Pelham High School. So, I want to pick Dabo so bad because I love Dabo, but I just think Notre Dame's got
Notre Dame threw for 116 yards last week.
I don't think they're going to have to. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think Clemson's going to shoot themselves in the foot so bad because they can't figure out who they are.
It'll be close.
They've struggled all year, Coach.
It'll be close, but it's Notre Dame. Just God, they suck.
All right. Speaking of teams that suck, Kentucky at Missouri. UK -2, over and unders 43.5. This is for a friend of ours at SEC Sports Talk, John, SEC John on Twitter. He supports the Hogs. I mean, he's a UK guy, but he loves the Razorbacks too. Danny and Brooke both picked UK across the board. Greg, who you got, UK or the meth zoo team from up north?
Yeah, there's nothing in my body that could ever get me to pick Missouri, so I'm going Kentucky.
Brad.
I'm sorry, my son came in here.
That's all right.
Hey, go to bed. Anyway, let me give you a little backstory on Mizzou and Coach Drinkwitz. He went to Arkansas Tech, where I went to school at, and he played on my flag football team first year that he was at school. And he ended up splitting off, and we were rivals. And I beat him every time on the field. So I'm going to go ahead and take Kentucky because I don't want to pick for him at all. So I'm going with Kentucky over Mizzou.
Grant, who you got?
I am a little bit torn. My boy Alfred Davis, who played with me at Arkansas as a defensive line coach at Mizzou. I have watched their defensive line play. They're actually productive, but I think Will Levis and UK probably just going to be too much for them. Unless you catch that Mizzou team that showed up against Georgia at home, which wherever they pulled that out from, whatever game plan they drew up for that, I mean, wow. But I think Kentucky probably gets back on track here this week and takes care of Missouri.
Kentucky's a 2-point favorite. The over and under is 40. Taking Kentucky +7 and the over on that game. I think Kentucky's going to absolutely just beat the dog mess out of Missouri Saturday. I don't think Missouri's is, I'm like Brad. I remember when Dorkwitz was in Russellville. I was living in Russellville back in those days. Had a couple of run-ins with him myself. Don't much care for the midget. So, yeah, I called him a midget. Dorkwitz, you're a midget. I got Kentucky winning big in that game. I really think Kentucky's going to beat the dog crap out of them. Coach.
Kentucky is a bunch of pretenders. They always have been. They always will be in the game of football. Every year, it's this year's for Kentucky, blah, 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 blah. Then they play somebody good and they suck. 44-6 last week. Could I remind you of that? I mean, Kentucky looked like they didn't know what they were doing. Then Missouri is the biggest Jekyll and Hyde team that you'll see. They literally almost beat Georgia. They lost by 4. Then they turned around and barely beat Vandy by a field goal. I mean, that's Jekyll and Hyde because that's 2 of the worst teams in the world. I mean, that's a bigger discrepancy than any 2 teams in the world. Then they go down to South Carolina, and I paid attention to that game, and they played them very, very well. I think we get the good Missouri team. I'm a Drinkwitz fan. I think he does things right by the book. I think he's a pretty good offensive play caller. I think he's an analytics guy, which I like. And Kentucky sucks so bad that I didn't want to pick either team, but I'm going to go with Missouri because also Rick Jones, my former sparring partner at Greenwood is there as an analytics guy and doing some football op stuff. So I'm gonna pick Missouri for a couple of reasons, but I do think they beat them.
I can't in good conscience beat a team from a state that their most valuable export product is methamphetamine. I just can't do it.
Is that not ours too?
No, ours, we're more cotton and rice, Coach. Methamphetamine seems to be the thing that's made south, right into Columbia and right in that area.
Well, it's made in Bonnerdale. It's made in Bonnerdale, Arkansas, south of the Hot Springs, Robertsville. Believe me, you just roll past those houses. Keep your eyes straight on the road. Don't be looking sideways.
Don't be looking sideways. That's right. Another game that folks are going to have their eye on this week. We got one more. We're going to get to the Arkansas game in a second. Texas at Kansas State. Texas -1.5. Over and under is 54.5. Greg, who you got?
This is all I just want to say. It's not even saying anything. Kansas State.
Gotcha. Brad.
But Texas always has better players than just about everybody they step on the field with, but somehow figure out a way to lose to the Kansases and the Kansas States and the Iowa States. And, they've done that already this year. Kansas State's a decent team this year. I'll go with Kansas State as well at home.
Grant?
Kansas State's at home, right?
Yep.
I'm going to go against the grain here. I think they came off a big-time emotional win last week at Oklahoma State. Everyone's super hyped. They probably took their eye off the ball a little bit, feeling themselves coming through practice this week. I think Texas probably slips in there and finds a win.
Not so fast. I think Kansas State I think the guy at Kansas State's doing something special. Coach Schneider is a good friend of the mental health group that I work with. I'm Changing the Narrative, and heard some things from him. He really, really likes what he sees out of this Kansas State team in Manhattan. I got to go Kansas State. My daddy would come out of his grave if he thought I was going to pick Texas in anything. So, Coach.
If you look at Kansas State, they're good for one great upset a year.
Yeah.
And that happened last week when they beat the absolute tar out of Oklahoma State 48-0.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas, nobody likes Texas. I lived in Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas. Now, I'm not a Texas fan, but I'm not against them like everybody else is here because the state's good to me. They don't make you pay taxes down there. Who doesn't like that, But Texas, let's be honest, Bama, one play difference in winning and losing the game. We all could agree to that. Yeah. Texas Tech, overtime, they lose in overtime. One play is the difference in the game. Oklahoma State, one play, they go to overtime. That's the difference in the game. I mean, they're 3 plays away from being undefeated. Now, they found a way to lose those games. Kansas State's coming off the game of their life, and it's just hard to – and I'm with Grant. I think it's emotional letdown. It's a lot of things, but Texas is actually, if I'm going to wager a little bit, I'm going to wager on Texas this week.
All right.
I mean, I don't love Arkansas just because I picked Texas. All right? I know there's people out there like, this guy hates the Hogs because he picked Texas.
You're going to catch hell on Twitter, Grant. Listen, I'm telling you right now.
Listen, I didn't grow up in the generation where Texas and Arkansas were like in this heated rivalry, right? So, and I understand the horns down, and there's always this underlying hatred for Texas. You don't at me on Twitter because I picked Texas. All right?
Give us one of these, Grant. Give us one of these.
I can't do that. That will get you roasted. We did get the crap beat out of us in 2008 down there, so I don't like them for that. But anyway, I think this week they probably pull it out.
That was a hurricane game, if I remember correctly. Didn't they have to reschedule that because of a hurricane?
No, they would have rescheduled it.
I was in Dallas that weekend.
No, and they wanted to reschedule. It was a hurricane for Tyler Wilson. I think that might have been his first start. And I love Tyler.
I think he came in. Casey started and Tyler came in. It was kind of one of those deals where let's put him in and see what he can do because this one's out of hand quick. I think we lost 56-7, something like that, and they went in.
Yeah, I'm a Tyler Wilson fan, and he's a friend of mine. But man, that was a tough one to come into there.
Yeah. McCoy, I mean, they had everybody that year. I mean, that was
That's a
back when
fact.
Texas was rolling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The game we're here for, homecoming Saturday, 3:00, SEC Network. Razorback fans need to pack Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium Saturday afternoon. Liberty's coming into Fayetteville, 14-point dog at home. Arkansas's 14, favored by 14, excuse me. Over and under 64.5. I think that over and under's moved down to like 62.5. Greg, what do you got?
Arkansas.
Of course.
It's I mean, I think we're just going to come out of the gates rolling. They're not going to be able to stop us on the ground. And, you know, like we talked about earlier, they're going to focus on the run. And all of a sudden, we're about to just murder them through the air. I think it's going to be a blowout game. I think it's going to be Arkansas 48, Liberty 17.
All right. Before I go on, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, Danny's picked the Hogs 36-17. Brooke has picked the Hogs 38-17. So 17 seems to be the number that's popular tonight. Y'all must have communicated on the bottom side of the score. I think you and Danny are connected at the hip or something. It's really weird. Brad, we may need to have an HR meeting later about that. I don't know.
Jesus Christ.
So Brad, who you got? Hogs, Liberty?
Well, I'm going to take Arkansas. I don't know if I can pull it as far as that number. I'm torn, and I'll tell you, I listened to Coach Kelly, and he kind of talked me into some of this, but I did feel good about the running game of Arkansas. And so I feel like if Rocket Sanders ends up going for 193, like I said, I think it'll be a pretty easy win. I will say that Arkansas wins 41-24 over Liberty.
Grant.
The Hogs. Here's the old battle helmet right here. Probably should have had a couple more of these on the back of it, but that's between me and Coach Petrino. No, I think Arkansas has their way. I don't know that the score gets extremely high because I do think we take care of business in the first half. We probably start to see some of the other cats come in the second half, and we may not be as efficient on offense and defense as we want to be. I think it's probably a 38-21 game. Liberty probably scores another one late. But we're going to score the majority of that 38 in the first half. And hopefully we start to see some of the key guys over there, you know, not with their helmet in their hand like I just had, and not let them, because we got some key games coming up. But 38-21 Hogs.
Grant, I'm with you. You know, I'd love to have one of them helmets. So if you got an extra one that'll fit a bucket head, you know, hook me up. I'd wear it on the show if I had one. I ain't gonna lie to you. You know, I got Arkansas winning this game. I'll tell you why. I think we're going to dominate the line of scrimmage Saturday. I think the offensive line is going to get an opportunity to flex their muscles in the first half. I think we're going to average somewhere between 5.5 and 5.8 yards on a carry. But the tail of this game is going to be the quarterback. I think KJ Jefferson's going to go off. And I'm going to go ahead and lay this out there. I think KJ goes for 330 plus through the air early. Like, I think it's going to get out of hand to the point that we're going to see a lot of backups in the second half. I think the confidence that he has built at his position with the BYU play, with the way he played last week at Auburn, the way that he is progressing throwing the football and the comfortableness he's getting with Jaden Hazelwood, with Matt Landers, Bryce Stevens is coming on. I mean, we're seeing some other guys get involved in the passing game, especially from the running back position. I think the passing game is going to go off Saturday. I've got the Hogs 52. I've got Liberty 24. I think Liberty is gonna score some late. It's going to be a lot of trash scores. I think they only have 3 points at the end of the first half. I think the Hogs are way out in front. They put in a bunch of the B team, C team guys, and Liberty kind of comes back the second half, and we see kind of an upside down score. But you know, as far as the second half score goes, but I think all in all, I think Razorbacks just going to beat the brakes off of Hugh Freeze. I think he's more concerned about, am I going to get the offer to go coach the Auburn Tigers than he is coaching Liberty right now. That's just my opinion. So Coach Kelly, what you got?
I'm going to finish it off with Arkansas at least by 20, and I think it could be real bad. Maybe they get a mercy rule or something at the end that makes them feel good about life. I don't know, but I just don't think they're like we talked about. Their strength doesn't match up with our weakness. It's not what they do good. I think if they're going to bring that guy down in the box, we're comfortable now with Landers and Hazelwood. We can throw the ball. I really think Arkansas is going to get, stay on the right track after that win over Auburn. And the schedule lines up for them. The schedule lines up for them to have a nice run with what Grant and I were talking about with Ole Miss and LSU coming off Bama back, Bama.
Mm-hmm.
It sets us up for a nice little run to finish out the year. And then that big game against Missouri that we've got to exercise some demons from. But I think this is another stepping stone along the way. It's good that it's at home, and I think the players are excited about it and have the right attitude. I was listening to Dalton Wagner talk today. And I love where they're at. And when it comes down to it, you're only as good as your offensive line is. And right now, ours is really good.
No, Coach, I 100% agree with you. I'm looking forward. Again, I keep going back to this. I have loved watching this offensive line get better every single week. And knock on wood, these guys are playing clean and are playing healthy. I mean, when's the last time we've had the same 5 guys line up week in, week out? We got 2 of the highest graded tackles. We've got Bo Limmer is the 3rd highest graded guard in the upcoming draft. And then Stromberg is like number 2 in the country as far as graded centers coming out. We could legit see all 5 of these guys, or 4 out of 5 of these guys, get drafted in the first 2 days of the NFL draft this coming spring. I really love what this offensive line's doing. I love what Coach Kennedy, Coach Pittman have been able to do up front. Being a big guy myself, kind of like Grant, I played on the other side of the ball, but I still love to watch big guys play and have a good time and do their job. So, guys, I appreciate it. Grant, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you being a part of the show. We want to try to get you back later on in the season, maybe going towards the end of the year, getting into Missouri week. Coach, it's great having you back. Brad, thanks for sitting in tonight. You're welcome anytime, brother. You know it. Greg, man, I love the shirt. Love the flag. I'm just glad you ain't got that ugly Packers jersey hanging over your head anymore.
It got burned.
Thank you. Thank
Good.
you. It does my heart good. Hey, shout out to my son, Russellville, going to West Memphis in a couple of weeks. First playoff game for my sophomore, my 16-year-old. I'm going to be in Northeast Arkansas, watch him in a couple of weeks. Really looking forward to that. Shout out to the Russellville Cyclones. Guys, come back next week. We're looking forward to it. We're going to have space tomorrow night. We're going to talk about some more of this stuff on Twitter. Guys, if you're on Twitter and you follow us, check us out at Arkansas Sports Network. Also, check us out at Big Pig Energy on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook at Arkansas Sports Network. Brad, what's the game of the week this week for Arkansas Sports Network?
You got Malvern and Arkadelphia, and I'm just
saying, be a good one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being at that one. We and of course we're looking forward to being at some playoff games as well. So we're going to have a fun month of November for sure.
November state playoff football in Arkansas is always a fun time. Looking forward to that. Guys, join us next week. We're going to be talking post-game stuff on the Liberty game. Going to be looking forward to LSU coming up the following week. I'm a little pissed off about the 11 a.m. start. Shout out to our co-host, Danny. She sent a letter into the SEC offices, got a response back, and actually had a phone call with her CFO today. Go check her out on Twitter. You can read the whole conversation, but shout out to Danny. That's a huge thing for a 24-year-old associate co-host on a podcast. I was really proud of her the way she handled that whole thing. Guys, come back, see us next week. We appreciate you, and go Hogs.